And today, we're actually going to talk about adding data. In this particular case, we'll call it a sales plan, but it could be, you could add data from Excel, and we're going to talk about how you would do that by using the viewer interface in version 7.1. So that's kind of the topic for today, adding a sales plan from Excel into Stratum. My name's Adam Kurtz, and I've been with Sylvan Software for 21 years, and I'm going to guide you through this concept and what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit about this concept of what we say Stratum or call Stratum UCD. UCD being an acronym standing for User Controlled Data. So we'll explain a little bit about what that means, and then we'll look at the Excel file that we're going to use and talk a little bit about the different formats that are available to import into Stratum. And then we'll take a look at the data import menu itself that is accessed via the admin utilities menu in viewer. And we'll actually take a look at how we would actually import the file and how we would map it into Stratum. Once we import the data into Stratum, obviously the way it's designed, it actually processes immediately. It does not go into an overnight batch process. So this is something, if it's a reasonable amount of data, that you would be able to see pretty quickly. So we'll simulate that today in the demo, and we'll actually take a look at the results. You'll be able to use it immediately in your analysis. And then also you'll be able to use the planning capabilities to make further adjustments once you've uploaded your plan. So we're going to step through some of that today in a demo. And then if we have time, we'll open up for some questions. But today, what we call the Stratum Data Hub, as you can see, is a series of different layers of applications and functionalities that are available to you. The predefined repository of Stratum is available today and has been available for many years, where it brings to the table the predefined analytics for sales, for inventory management and analysis, and marketing and purchasing, and basically the whole gamut of your enterprise can be analyzed by using Stratum. So Stratum brings a lot of that to the table, the underlying data model to house the different types of data that you bring into Stratum. Today, we're going to be concentrating on this area up here called user-generated data or user-controlled data. How we would actually generate a plan. We'll talk a little bit about data copy as well. Certainly, that's a way to create a plan, and that was functionality that had been introduced in the prior version. But today we'll focus mostly on data import using Excel to feed into a plan that's stored within Stratum. Here, if we focus further into this area of user-generated or user-controlled data, we can see the data import here is a part of that area, is a feature that's available to us that we want to take a look at. But there's also other areas here that are part of the picture as well. The data copy feature, again, is part of this concept. And being able to go in and use planning, these are your power users. We're talking about business analysts being able to do this. Okay, this is not something that would be overly too technical for a business user or a business analyst to handle. So that is our intent here, is to allow user to actually import data into Stratum, something they would be able to do that's menu driven, and is kind of, again, getting away from the overly technical back end way of, or the traditional method as you might be more comfortable with in terms of loading data into Stratum. Now we're actually letting a user do it. So this opens up quite a bit in terms of allowing users or certain power users or business analysts to use this capability to actually populate data into Stratum. We're seeing a lot of this concept today, and is Stratum is certainly available to do this as well. Um, so let's take a look at what we're going to talk, kind of go through here. We're going to take a look at some of the Excel file formats that are available. There's really only two formats that are available for file import. So we're going to take a look at what those would look like. We're also going to talk a little bit more about those Excel files, what they contain, and how they would actually leverage the different things within Stratum to basically derive other pieces of data. We'll talk a little bit more about that once we look at the file. Well, obviously we're going to go into the Stratum data import menu, so we're going to take a look at that. We're going to actually import a file, and we're going to map it, and hopefully you'll see how easy that can be done. Then once we go ahead and submit the job, we'll take a look at the result of the importing of the data. We'll use the views within Stratum to take a look at that. And certainly, so that's something that you're probably already used to doing today, is running views within Viewer and being able to look at that data. Nothing's different here in terms of that. So certainly once you import the data, then obviously, yes, you'll be able to build a view or use your existing views to analyze the data that you've just imported. And that can be done within minutes, again, depending on how much data you're importing. This functionality resides in Viewer 7.1. So this is something that you would need to upgrade to if you're not at that level. And certainly you can contact Sylvan and we can help you get there. But it's not a huge undertaking. This is something that certainly you could do on your own. You can certainly hire us for services, and we can help you with that process if you don't feel comfortable doing that on your own, or if you don't have the resources. Okay, so let's take a look at this in action. What we're going to do is, first of all, let's take a look at some of the Excel files that we want to use to import data into Stratum. So I'm going to go to my Excel files here, and I've got an example here of a file that is pretty classic. Here we see that, you've got your classic flat file format. One thing that jumps out at me here is that, you've got basically a horizontal file of time. We can see, January, February, the months are going out in a horizontal fashion. This is what we would call a time series file. Given the fact that time is in a series here, that's what it's called. Other things that we see here is that, we're planning at the region level. We've also got the region name in here. We've got brand and the brand description, and we've got product and its associated description, and customer and its associated description as well. So this is the file we're going to use, and certainly within Stratum, you've got other levels, other dimension levels within Stratum. You might be asking yourself, well, I've got product category, why isn't that in here? I've got product type, I've got different types of customer segments and whatnot. Well, as long as you have Stratum's previous levels set up, that'll actually populate once this loads into Stratum. So the engine of Stratum is providing lots of value in terms of being able to derive data at other levels that are associated to these primary levels. For instance, once we load product into Stratum, not only will brand populate, well, brand is part of the file, but also product type, product class, product family. Those are all previous levels of product that would then begin to populate as well. Even though they're not part of this file, Stratum already knows how to populate those other levels. And it knows that from the master file data that you load into Stratum. And you've been doing that all along. So, and that's something you do for your sales data. Once you load your sales, if you think about on an invoice, you really only have a SKU and a ship to typically. And from there, we can derive and roll the data up to many different levels based on the relationships in your master file on your ERP system. So that's something that's mirrored typically within Stratum. so that we can take advantage of that. In this particular scenario, we would actually be able to take advantage of it by uploading this file and using those previous levels. And again, this is something that would just happen. This is you would not have to do anything special. You would just load this file in and let Stratum do its magic behind the scenes. Okay, so this is the horizontal type of file that you would use, or what we call a time series file, right? The other type of file would be what we call a transactional file. So here we can see this is somewhat similar. We don't necessarily have brand associated here, but we've got product and customer. And like I said, Stratum will do its magic behind the scenes by populating the other product and customer levels using the previous level concept. But here we can see, instead of the data going out in horizontal fashion, all these cells are empty. The data is more of a vertical file now at this point, where you've got one column of data, and you could have multiple columns of data here, but basically you've got a timestamp for that record. So you don't have multiple buckets of time here. You've got one specific transactional date here, and this is what we would use to bucket that data into Stratum. And time is another discussion, right? When we load data into Stratum today, we also take advantage of the calendars that you maintain on a year-to-year basis. So typically, a plan or a budget type category is monthly in nature, which would have 12 buckets, right? 12 buckets for each month of the year. But also, in your calendars, typically you would roll those monthly buckets into quarters, and certainly into a year. So again, more value is being provided here. And certainly if this was a weekly file, then this would roll into months, quarters, and then certainly aggregate up to the year. So Stratum's, again, providing that value of the calendars that you're maintaining. It knows how to roll this data up. And guess what? You're going to be able to actually maintain it within Viewer at the yearly level, at the monthly level, at the quarter level. So it's flexible in terms of where you would want to maintain the plan at those different levels of time. All right, so this is the transaction file. You might use something similar to this. All right, so with that being said, let's take a look at Viewer itself. And we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna take a look at that data import menu, which is right here in admin utilities. So you're gonna need to definitely have access to the admin utilities menu. And then from here, you'll be able to actually go in and click on data import. All right, so there you can see that we've got different types of imports happening here. I've got a budget and a forecast import. I've got operational data that I can import, PO, receipt data, US Census. So as you can see, it's flexible. It doesn't really matter what type of data it is, as long as you have permission to do this, obviously. And yes, there would be, definitely a permission for your user to actually have this capability to do this. So you don't want everyone out there importing files into Stratum. That would be anarchy. But certainly, there would be key users that would actually be able to do this. And on top of that, they would only be able to import data into specific categories of data. So, you have this, you've got the ability then to go in and add in a new import. So if I want to click on new, I can go ahead and select, it will then take me to my files that I have within my hard drive. So now I'm actually going out to my hard drive and I'm selecting a file within my laptop, and I'm going to select the file that we actually just looked at, which is called budget example. And I'm going to go ahead and close those out because I do believe they need to be closed. So I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to click on that, and it's going to map that in for me. But before it does that, I need to tell it a little something about what my intent of this data and basically what it looks like. what type of file that I'm using. Is it, horizontal? Is it time series, or is it transactional? Um, but before we do that, we have a general area up here that we want to answer a couple of questions, right? So in this case, what's my import option? And we have two options here. We've got an add and we've got a replace. So you've got this concept of adding in data. For instance, if this is a new a plan category, well, then you would have the ability to go in and add the data in. There's really nothing to replace there. But if you've done a couple of these and you've made a couple of tweaks to the data within the Excel file, and now you want to replace what you've just uploaded, certainly you would have the ability to do that as well. Here, then, you would have your target category. In this case, my target category is called opportunities. It could be called basically any category that you want to upload. You would make available to from a permission standpoint, you would make that available as a data import measure, right? So now you have this capability of selecting. We know that Stratum has more than just one category, right? So now, as you can see, I can't really screw up anything else. I can't upload data to sales, which would be a nightmare, or anything else for that matter. So here are your target category. Mine's called opportunities. Yours might be called a budget or a plan. It is, it basically, it's all boils down to like terminology. And your views might say something else because, of course, users can rename measures in their views. Okay, so what type of file are we going to use? I'm going to kind of concentrate on the time series file. So I'll go ahead and make that selection of time series. And now this gets into a little bit more about how intimate you are with the file. So you need to know, in terms of Stratum, kind of needs to know how many header rows that you have in that file. Well, I know that we have 3, so I'm going to go ahead and put that in there so that Stratum knows that it needs to kind of ignore those rows within the file. And then also quite important here is where does where are the dates? So Stratum needs to know where those date timestamps are. And if you remember, if we were looking at that time series file, I had little dates of the months that I wanted to use so that it knew where to place that data within Stratum, what monthly bucket to place that data into. And that was on the 3rd header row, right? So with that being said, on top of that, I believe my data looked like this, where we had month, day, and year, or something along those lines. So it's kind of telling us how to map in this data. And gosh, I kind of forgot, but let's take a look at, maybe we'll take a shot at this. I don't think that's it though. I believe it looks more like, let's try this. So I think we're ready to go. So let's map that in. And here we have, it looks pretty good. First of all, when it's green like this, it's telling you that it's a good thing. It seems to already know how to map a lot of this data in already. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of my left screen, my left frame menu there. Here is the menu where we can see that the file now is within Stratum, or it's not completely uploaded, but now I'm able to tell Stratum more about this file where I need to. We can see here that the region has been mapped in and it knows that it's a dimension. However, I can go ahead and tell it a few things myself if I want to. First of all, it is a dimension, so I definitely would not want to change this. So as we can see within our file, we have dimensions, we have descriptions, and then we have the transactional data over here to the right, going again in horizontal time series fashion, right? So this would definitely be a region, would be my dimension. So I definitely would want to map that as a dimension. And then it mapped, smart mapping was able to actually pick it up as the region. So it knew that we already had a dimension named region in there. So it helps to have your file have the same names, right, as your dimensions within Stratum, so that you take advantage of this smart mapping. If I wanted to remap that to another dimension, I could, but I don't. But as you can see, it kind of exposes all the dimensions that are available to map to within that target category that you're importing the data to, right? The descriptions. Well, it's choosing to ignore this, and that's actually exactly what I want to do. Is ignore my descriptions in this file. And you might ask yourself, why? Well, we already have that information. We're already loading in our descriptions with our master file nightly loads. So there's no reason for us to load in the redundant data. So we're going to go ahead and select ignore, or in this case, we're going to keep it as ignore, and so on and so forth. So we can see that the mapping has been done for our dimension for product brand, ignoring the description for brand. Here we can see dimension product has been mapped, and so on and so forth. The descriptions have been ignored, etc. Here we can see that the data has been mapped to the time buckets accordingly. So that's exactly how we want it to get imported in. Once you're ready, then you would just go ahead and kick off and submit and click on your submit data for import for processing. The data gets uploaded, and then we can actually go in, excuse me, and take a look at the data that we just uploaded. So in this case, I'm going to just focus on the East region. But here is what the data would look like. Once the data has been uploaded, you would then be able to come in here and, well, I'm just going to aggregate this up to the yearly level. And at its highest level of time, I can see that next year has been populated with my budget that I put into my budget category. I know it said opportunities, but this particular view says budget amount. Same target category, and now I've got my data here that I've just uploaded from Excel. I'm looking at brand, which was part of that file. So we know that brand should have been populated, and it is, of course, because it's part of that file. But we also have customer city, we've got product class. These dimensions were not part of the file. So what would happen if I were to put in, for instance, my product class and have that as my first dimension here? Well, guess what? The data is going to be there. Because product is related to product class, Stratum knows how to roll that data up to the product class structure and its relationship to the product. So of course, yes, you're going to have your budget data is going to be populated here, and it's going to, and also you can manage it here as well. Which is really awesome, right? Because now you're talking about being able to manage your plan at higher levels, at a more macro level, and a lot of times it's easier to do it that way. For instance, if I wanted to make my branded level business a little bit more than just 2.2% better, then I can actually put in a number here that might get me over that hump, right? It might, maybe I have a knowledge of that brand where it's going to perform a little bit better than that 2.2%. So now, not only am I being able to analyze and visualize the data that I just uploaded into Stratum, but now I'm actually adjusting it. So the planning capability is now kicking in, where I'm able to actually come in and adjust the data that I just imported in from my Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to go ahead and commit this and process my plan so that 180 mil gets basically written back to the database. And then we'll see how that spreads back down to my different items. So it's actually writing that data back to the Stratum database. While that's running, we'll take a look at also where you'll be able to benefit and take a look at this data. Our plan using dashboarding. This is our new dashboard capability within Viewer. So if you're up on 7.1 version, you are entitled to have this as part of your upgrade. And as you can see, you can now use your views in different what we call widgets within your Stratum dashboard. If you don't have this version and you want it, because again, this is just part of the new version of 7.1, it just comes with your version. You may want to take advantage of this. Contact us, let us know, and we can help you get upgraded. But here we can see that plan. The plan is within my graphs, so right away I can see how my plan is being compared to my sales amount, and so certainly I can look at my plan within my Stratum dashboard, which looks fantastic. And then on top of that, maybe there's other dashboard technologies that you're using as well. In this case, Power BI. We're actually, again, that would just go against your Stratum database. Here I can see the budget amount that I just loaded in, and clicking in on that, I can then see the budget amount versus my sales amount. And so now I'm actually looking at this data using Power BI and its powerful capabilities. So you have that, and certainly once you import this data, you're going to be able to take advantage of many different types of visualizations that you're already using today, Viewer, Power BI, and Excel for that matter. And then certainly once you have this data within Stratum, you could take advantage of different visualization tools to analyze the data. Here we can see that now. What's special about Stratum is that it provides this capability of being able to adjust this number. I can't tell you how cool this is, because it's so amazingly efficient that now I can actually drill this down, for instance, to product. So now I'm going to drag and drop my product into my branded area, and we're going to see how this spread out to my different products. So here we can see that if I go down here to the bottom, sure enough, my 180 million number is there. It's stuck. So that's saved. And then what's the beautiful part about this is that all my different products have been updated as well. And not only that, but it's kept the ratio of the sales, right? So now I've got these reasonable differences that I wanted to maintain at the product level as well. Now, once you get down to the product level, you can keep going, right? So if you have specific products that you're anticipating even more type of promotional activity, then certainly you'll be able to come in and do further adjustments at the low level as well, right? So the planning capability certainly has that capability to manage it at different levels, right? Top, middle, bottom up, middle out, top down. It's up to you in terms of how you would want to manage that. And then also are these virtual dimensions as well. So if I drag and drop over, for instance, my customer city, now I know that wasn't part of the file either. How is this data being populated at customer city? Well, customer city happens to be a pickup field at the customer level. So again, Stratum with its powerful relationship capabilities, you're now able to, in this case, we have a virtual dimension created from that pickup field within Stratum called Customer City. So as you can see, we're able to actually visualize that plan data that we just imported in, and at that virtual dimension level. Not only that, we can change the numbers here as well. Just because it's a virtual dimension doesn't mean that you cannot use the planning capabilities to change your import. So certainly that's available, and you have that capability as well. But no, this becomes drillable now. So now you've got this capability of going in and being able to drill in on that data, that planning, that import data, that Excel file data that we just imported in as well. So again, that was just part of this ability to import my data. As you can see, I've got this concept of picking a file, being able to actually map that in, tell it, what type of data it is, what type of file, whether I'm adding or replacing the data, what my target category. It's pretty simple. Once you get the hang of it, you can actually come in here and you can really kind of get, um, you know, uh, pretty quick with it, right? So now you've mapped this data in, and now you're able to actually go ahead and click on the process button to go ahead and take it on into Stratum. So, um, yeah, I mean that's kind of what I wanted to show today.